Welcome once again to the Christmas and New Year's edition of the Cow Report, and I'm your host Chuck Lee, and we want to welcome you to the L.A. Phillips Memorial Library and Taco Stand, and we're glad you could be with us today on this federal holiday, December 26, 1994, our last program of 1994, and with me as usual to comment and give wisdom and advice is Fred, the true Stafford.
Hello there, everybody.
Glad to see you again, Fred.
Wish you a blessed Christmas, a happy, holy, healthy, and a prosperous New Year.
Now, is there any truth to the rumor, Fred, that you're coming out of retirement to fight Norton?
Norton?
Yeah, heavyweight match.
No way.
All right, we're just checking. I've been hearing some rumors about that. You got a close-up of that there, Roy? That's Roy Rogers Hoff. Put that right there, Roy. You can get a close-up of that, and we'll have him look at that and things of that nature. And of course, we are taking phone calls today because Fred doesn't have much to talk about. We drug him out of bed, and like I say, he's in training for his next fight. Now, this isn't the what do you call it? An authorized match.
You know any more jokes?
This isn't an authorized match, is it, Fred? I mean, this is not sanctioned by the National.
Not sanctioned by anybody.
National Boxing League or anything. All right, okay. Well, we're glad to have you with us anyway, Fred. And
Yes.
I'm sure, as usual, you got something to talk about on this beautiful day, Fred. Isn't this wonderful?
Right.
Now, we try to have a short prayer at the beginning of every show, Fred.
Yeah.
We don't want any Latin or any hominies and dominies. Let's just get down to the facts.
All right.
So let's say your prayer.
Heavenly Father, you give us the gift of freedom to love and to follow in your ways and commands. Some parents choose to abuse this freedom by destroying the gift of life which you have given to their offspring. Please forgive those people who destroy human life by aborting their unborn babies. Give these unborn children the opportunity to enjoy you for all eternity. Assist me in being one in solidarity with your little ones by taking to heart the words of your Son. Whatever you did for one of these least brothers of mine, you did for me. Therefore, allow me today, Father, to adopt spiritually an unborn child and offer my prayers, works, joys, and sufferings for the little one so that the child will be able to be born and live for your greater honor and glory. We pray this in Jesus' name and in union with the Holy Spirit, one God, forever and ever. Amen.
All right, Fred, that was a good prayer.
You like that prayer?
Where'd you find that one at?
Well, this one is from Human Life International.
Huh. Okay, now, Roy, did you get a close-up of that Christmas card there? Well, I guess that's about as close as we're going to get. There. It might be too hard to see, but anyway, that is the Jerry Falwell family, Fred.
It is?
Yeah, Jerry Falwell, ladies and gentlemen. He puts out some very good films. It says, "Glory to God in the highest, and on earth, peace, goodwill towards men." The Falwell family. Okay, Fred. Jerry Falwell. All right, I know you have some Falwell fans out there, Fred. All right, Fred, well, there's been a lot of stuff going on out there in the big old world, and of course, Christmas was yesterday.
You betcha.
And I was on my computer last night, and I found a comparison between Santa Claus and Jesus, Fred.
No.
And did you know that the original Santa Claus was from about 1,700 years ago?
That was St. Nicholas.
Well, that was one of them. But anyway, by the time now it's all rolled into one as St. Nicholas, jolly old St. Nick, and all that stuff. But he was a patron saint of Russia, but he came from 1,700 years ago, Fred. And it's taken on a religious, not a Christian, but a religious overtones that Santa has. Like Jesus talks about Jesus or God having a white beard in the Bible, and how the red clothes of...
well, Jesus didn't have a white beard,
well,
did
he will when you see him next time. If you read your Bible, Fred, he'll have a beard as white as snow. Now, also there's a red... Santa Claus is all in red, and that signifies the same, the blood of Jesus in Jesus' case. And you got to be nice, or Santa Claus ain't going to give you anything. And so there's a lot of comparisons right down, and what it is, Fred, is just to divert people from Christianity and get them over here looking at the worldly aspects and all the toys and the greed and everything that goes along with buying and selling and giving gifts and stuff.
The materialistic aspect of Christmas.
Now, the only gifts that were given on the original Christmas was to Jesus in the manger. Myrrh, frankincense, and gold from the 3 wise men that came from the east.
Yes.
And so we've really blown it out of proportion over the last 2,000 years, Fred. It's really gotten out of hand.
In the last 30, 40 years especially.
Of course, it's kind of like it's a feeding frenzy, and everybody's enjoying it because people are making money on, the retailers make money, the manufacturers make money, the people working in the stores and in the factories, they make money. So everybody's happy, Fred.
Yes.
But it's gotten to where it's got nothing to do with the birth of Christ anymore. Even the Christmas tree is an old pagan Roman celebration, Fred, that was pulled over by the new Christians in Rome. They mixed that pagan Christianity. They mixed the pagan religions with the old Christmas tree and some gods and goddesses. They mixed that in with the new Christianity that Paul brought to Rome and polluted it.
Yes. Well, you know, I was watching yesterday as we drove around, and I only saw 2 or 3 crib scenes.
Mm-hmm.
And they had Santa Claus and reindeer and all kinds of lights and everything, but only 2 crib scenes. And makes me wonder what the people were celebrating.
Well, Fred, you give man enough time and he'll screw up anything. It's just human nature to take something perfect, start counterfeiting it, and messing it up. And that's basically what it's all about. There's an original, then there's a counterfeit. Now, for there to be a counterfeit, there had to be something original to copy from.
Right.
And that's what we see in Christianity. We see counterfeits right down the line, all through humanity and all through life, all through history.
Well, you know what you say is true. When you read the Bible and then you listen to what some of the leaders of the various churches say, there doesn't seem to be any connection.
With what?
With the Bible, what they're saying.
I know.
In other words, their talks or their sermons are not related.
You get them talking about Dickens and about, I've even seen, gone to a church service and there they'd have the minister dressed up like a clown trying to get the congregation to laugh. I mean, the congregation's only going to be there for 45 minutes to begin with, so why is there so much, why is he trying to create a clown scene?
Well, you know, that puzzles me too.
Yes, it's amazing, Fred. It's amazing what's going on in the Christian church, but you know, through every great revival in the world, Fred, there's been a kind of a shaking of the tree, and a lot of the bad apples fall off, and then there's a new revival. And so we're probably in store for a giant worldwide revival coming again. I know Billy Graham is going to be.
We certainly can use it.
I know Billy Graham is going to be on something like in 140 nations in a program coming up here in the next few months sometime. 140 nations of the world. So over 1 billion people are supposed to watch that show that's coming up, Fred. And so there's a lot of excitement out there, Fred, but there's also a lot of counterfeit. Now, we are taking calls today, and of course we have with us Roy Rogers Hoff in the control room, and as you know, Roy wasn't born Roy Rogers Hoff, Fred. The first choice was Hopalong Cassidy.
It was. Well, that's very good.
But there was too many H's in there, so his dad at the last minute changed it to Roy Rogers.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what he's been stuck with ever since. So Fred, we're going to take a call here, and sometimes we don't get to you right away, so stay on the phones. And you know, Fred, we're getting that caller ID program in here too, so that's going to cut down on the swearing and stuff. And unfortunately, some of the people out there with foul language and stuff are going to get nailed, and there's going to be a few court cases. But what can we say, Fred? It's going to be it's just going to be the way things are run down here because this show goes out nationwide, Fred, and we can't have people cussing and swearing on the air
Right.
when the president himself might be watching this, Fred. Then what are you going to do?
Well, he uses language like that, I think, himself.
So let's try a call here and see how the machinery is working today, and let's see if there's anybody on the other end there. We'll see if there's anybody out there, Fred. And as you know, Fred, public access is moving. So there's always construction going on around here.
Yeah?
You know, if you hold it down in there, that's Chris and Cliff Economaki, Fred. Siamese twins of engineering in there, Fred.
Yeah.
They're building a new engineering studio, you know.
What are they building it here for if they're going to move?
Well, they got it backwards, Fred.
You move and then you build it.
Somebody forgot to tell them it's not. It's kind of like building a ship in your basement, Fred, and then when you get it done, you can't get it out.
Well, you can always knock down the house.
So that's Chris and Cliff Economaki, the Siamese twins of engineering, Fred, and they've been with us now for what, 20, 25, 30 years?
Is that right?
Okay. All right, go ahead, caller. You're eagerly on the air.
Happy holidays, Chuck. How are you?
Okay, how are you doing today?
Fine. How's Fred?
Great.
Okay. Well, I got a couple questions for you.
All right, let me...
Do you think Steve Gunderson's going to run again, even though he said he wouldn't? And if he does, do you think 3rd District conservatives can beat him in the Republican primary?
Beat him in the Republican primary. Well, you know...
There's a possibility.
You know, there's going to be a Gunderson running, but it's not going to be Steve. It's going to be his brother Matt, and it's Steve's way of funneling his excess campaign money into another campaign without losing it, because that time is gone now where you used to be able to, when you could retire, you could dump all your money wherever you want. If you had $1 million campaign war chest built up, you could give it to whoever you want. Now there's some limitations on that, or you could take it with you if you're retired. Well, Gunderson and Steve is past that point now. And of course, he does have a $1.6 million retirement fund already set up at taxpayers' expense, which starts a little after the year 2000 and starts around $46,000 a year, plus automatic cost of living increases, Fred. A lot bigger than the Social Security cost of living increases, I might add. But he gave the sob story to some of the retired people out there that he wasn't going to have much of a retirement. Well, unfortunately, we proved him wrong on TV down in La Crosse. But anyway, that's another story. As far as the Gundersons, it will be his brother Matt, who's already started running for the 3rd District race. And so there'll be another Gunderson to contend with. And another plus for Matt is that his brother has all the thousands of names of donors and the calling lists and all the contacts throughout the 3rd District that Steve's built up over a 20-plus year career in politics, first in Madison and then in Washington. So the apparatus and the mechanics are already there for his brother to step in and take that machine. It's kind of like when Mayor Daley died, and then now Mayor Daley's son runs things. He just got the old machine going and found out that there was still a machine, a little bit rusty, but that's what's going to happen with Steve. As far as Matt's chances, Matt is very liberal. He lost in a 4-way race for U.S. Senate here just a few weeks ago, and he's going to have a hard time proving that he's conservative enough for the 3rd District, which Steve Gunderson had the benefit of the conservative swing in the country, thanks to Ross Perot and just the conservative mood of the country and how the voters were upset with the way Clinton was running things. So there was just a mass exodus from the Democratic Party and from the independents and third-party groups, and they all voted Republican, and they said we're going to give them 2 years. Well, so it wasn't actually a vote of confidence for Steve Gunderson. He just happened to be a Republican in the right place at the right time, and he got in on the landslide, Fred.
Well, do you think, Chuck, that there is a possibility that the Republicans will field a conservative candidate that will defeat this?
Now, let me tell you something, viewers. Fred's got a good question there. You remember the so-called Christians over in Minnesota? They were able to take over the Republican state party over there. They took over then they ran a candidate in the primary over there, Christian, very far right-wing Christian. That's what's going to happen in Wisconsin, Fred. The Christians and the far right are very good at doing good in primaries, and then they fall flat on their face in the general election because they don't have the base, the strong overall strength. They've got a good base, Fred, and that's what's good in primaries. You get out the hardcore of your following. You get them out there, and that's how Don Brill almost upset Gunderson, was in the primary.
Well, I think if there had been another couple of weeks in that campaign, he might have done it.
And Don Brill would have had a primary under his belt, and then he would have probably lost in the general.
Well, he wouldn't have lost that.
Oh, yes, he would. You know why? Because the Gundersonites would gone over and voted for Stour just in spite. There's a very big rift in the Republican Party.
You had the same thing happen in the Democratic Party where people went and voted for Gunderson.
Fred, I guarantee you the Democrats would have stayed home and voted for Stour if Don Brill got through the primary. It's just a matter of statistics and fact. The Christian coalition, the conservative coalition, is not strong enough yet in Wisconsin. It's been proven time after time. They're getting strong enough to where they're going to be able to carry primaries like Wayne Laufenberg. He's good at carrying primaries and then falling on his face in the general. He's done it twice now.
Yeah, but part of that was due to the unfair...
What do you think, caller?
Well, you think we can beat Matt Gunderson then in the primary?
Sure.
Well, with that machinery, that's the place you're going to have to beat him, because he's going to have a well-oiled machine behind him. He's got some people that have been in politics 20, 30 years. They know every dirty trick in the book. They're all going to get off the Steve Gunderson horse and hop on the Matt horse.
Yeah, but Matt already lost the primary. He didn't do very well at all in that Senate primary.
It was a four-way race, and if you look at the statistics, he didn't do that bad. And if you go back and look at the 3rd District statistics, it'll be a little more revealing. But, of course, you're going to have Steve out there helping Matt get elected, too. You know, you're going to have Steve on the stump. And
yeah, but is that an asset or not? I mean...
In 96, it might not be. In 94... Steve was in the right place at the right time and in the right party.
He happened to be a Republican in a Republican year, though, didn't he?
Yes.
I mean, if Gunderson had to run in a so-so environment for Republicans with his voting record, you know, I'm not so sure he could win.
Well, if you look at 96 now, that it's going to be that the Republicans will have 2 years under their belt of so-called running the Congress, but they're already backpedaling and scurrying for rocks to hide under when people are getting specific, and you haven't heard them talk about anything about rolling back the gun grabs. You haven't heard them talk about anything about rolling back this 100,000-man national police force that the Republicans helped vote through in the crime bill. You haven't heard the Republicans talk anything about abortion or any reforms in that area. They're steering clear a lot of these issues, and they're dangling things in front of us like constitutional amendments, which take years, sometimes up to 7 years, and then they don't pass. Look at the ERA constitutional amendment. It never did pass. And even
but don't you think Clinton would veto all that stuff anyway?
Well, here's another thing now. The Republicans have promised a line item veto for the president. But you haven't heard them talk much about that since the election because they've got a Democratic president in there that could come right in and chop everything right out of there, just like Governor Thompson does. Go in there and surgically remove some of that conservative legislation and leave the bill intact, but remove parts of it in the line item veto. And so all of a sudden now the Republicans are quiet about that. That's been put on the back burner, or maybe even put back in the refrigerator, Fred. But that was a hot item in the contract with America. Perot says you either produce or he'll get in front of a third-party movement and he'll cause some trouble. And I'll tell you what trouble he'll cause. He'll put Clinton back in there in 96. He'll do it. He did it in 94, and he'll do it again in 92, and he did it, and he'll do it in 96. Ross Perot is the one that put Clinton in office. Nobody else. It wasn't George Bush or anybody. People say Bush. Yeah, I know, Fred. George Bush ran a terrible campaign. Ross Perot ran a campaign and took 20% of the Republican vote away from Bush.
I know it.
So you'd have to have been an excellent campaigner to win in that case. The Democrats, when it comes to voting in a presidential race, vote for their own man, Fred. The Republicans are still wishy-washy, so some of them jumped over and voted for Perot. It split the Republican-conservative vote, and Perot helped Clinton win. That's all there is to it. Any way you analyze it, Ross Perot is the reason that Clinton's in there. And if the Republicans don't produce, you'll see Clinton in there for 4 more years. So what do you think, caller?
Well, I hope not, but I'm more concerned about the 3rd District here. I mean, our congressman is, he's really abandoned a lot of the core positions of the Republican Party in the last few years.
He abandoned them. He jumped out of the ship, and he's been running in the wrong direction for several years now, ever since before the '92 National Republican Convention, in which he boycotted. And there is some rumors that he went to a National Homosexual Convention instead. It's just rumors. Nobody's documented that he was there, but during the campaign I heard rumors that he was possibly at a national where they got their heads together and decided how the homosexuals were going to act in the '92 election, and they decided not to support Bush.
Okay, well, now what about the local Republican Party here? Do you think CPR is going to take over at the caucus in February, or do you think the conservatives are going to be able to stop that?
Well, you know, Fred here has intelligence. Fred keeps his ear to the ground. Fred's heard rumors that the CPR is recruiting left-wing Democrats, socialists, independents, whoever they can. It's kind of like Jesus said, go out in the byways and highways, Fred, and compel them to come in. So the CPR is out there.
They're not compelling them. I think they got something to sell, because they are selling what the Democratic Party used to be.
Yeah, but I think they're selling what the Democratic Party is now, but they still call it the Republican Party. So what you got is a hardcore group of leftists within the Republican Party. Some people used to call them the Rockefeller Republicans. Other people just call them leftists and socialists that have infiltrated the local Eau Claire County Party. They're trying to push the party off center and way to the left and make it a socialist Republican Party. And the key question is, it's something that a lot of people are watching nowadays, because it's just overwhelming how many people show up at these Republican caucuses now. Like 500-600 people will show up there, and they had about 250 vote at the last caucus. So it'll be interesting to see if the CPR leftist forces can take control of the local party, so that they can give the Gundersonites a straight shot. Because if they take over the Eau Claire County Republican Party, then they'll control not only that, but they'll control the 3rd District Party, and the leftists already control the state party, Fred. And the National Party, they're still in euphoria over their victory, so they're kind of neutral right now. They're not doing anything. But within the state of Wisconsin, you'll have a clean sweep coming out of Eau Claire for the leftists. So it'll be interesting to see if the conservatives and the Christians can join forces and hold off this onslaught by the leftists and transcendental meditationists and socialists and communists and disenfranchised Democrats and independents that the CPR is trying to bring in. It's going to be interesting in this caucus. And some of the movers and shakers that took over the party 2 years ago are no longer in the trenches working. So the CPR could very well pull an upset and not take the party back, because the party was fairly conservative, but they will take it in a whole new direction, way out on the left.
Now, do you think the Eau Claire paper is going to be behind CPR?
Well, some of the...
Definitely.
What do you know about that, Fred?
Well, I think that the paper has already shown its true colors, and in their support of various individuals.
I get the sense the Eau Claire paper is really hostile to conservatives and to the religious community here, and the pro-life movement, and
quite true.
They're not only hostile; they're in an attack mode.
Right, they're even nasty at times.
Yeah,
Bob Brown's column the other day was just terrible.
It's been that way for years. We had people. I talked to people from Chicago and Minneapolis. They said they'd never seen any kind of stories like the 7 or 8 or 9 day thing where they tried to shove homosexuality down the Eau Claire area's throats here. They did an 8 days in a row articles on how great it is to be homosexual. But they didn't show anyone laying in a hospital, Fred, dying of AIDS.
And they didn't tell about the invasions of various churches, the Catholic St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York, the Cathedral in Brooklyn, the Cathedral in Rockefeller Center, didn't show them acting up in there. And out in California, and the Lutheran Church, when I can't think of the name of the pastor that was going to come there, they invaded that, and there was no, he didn't get an opportunity to speak.
And they didn't show you they didn't tell you that 5 of the most notorious mass serial killers in the world live right here in the United States, and all 5 of them were homosexual, including John Wayne Gacy, who would sodomize young men and then slit their throats and bury them in his own house, or Jeffrey the Cannibal Dahmer, who not only sodomized his victims and tied them up and tried to turn them into zombies, but then he ate parts off of them. And that's just 2 examples. There was also a homosexual down in Texas that they say killed at least 100 boys, and he had some help from some other homosexual boys who would lure them in, and then he would kill them after having sex with them.
Well, what about all those articles in maybe this last summer in the Eau Claire paper about the religious right and how awful the religious right was, and they were taking over, and they wanted to take away books from kids? And, I mean, don't you think the Eau Claire paper was sort of feeding into that hysteria? And that
feeding into it, the Eau Claire Leader-Telegram helps create this hatred towards the Christians and the conservatives in this area. They are the creators of news. They're no longer just reporting the news. They're going out there and creating stories and then making it news. The Leader, what it is it's opinion from one end of the paper to the other when it comes to these kind of articles. And a perfect example was the propaganda they gave the local area on the homosexual issue, Fred. It's totally out of context. You think about it, this is a metropolitan area of close to 100,000 people, Fred. If there was such a thing as a 10% society, there'd be 10,000 homosexuals demanding their rights. There'd be at least 1,000 of them in the gay bars all the time. There's no 10,000 homosexuals around here. The only place that there's even close to 10% of society is where the homosexuals have flocked to, like Madison, San Francisco, the bigger cities. You can go through the Midwest up here and you'll find towns where there's not one homosexual. It's a fake, it's a phony, and a fraud from one end to the other. All it is to get federal money, to get sympathy, and to promote that lifestyle in not only the kindergartens, but the grade schools, the junior highs, and the high schools. And the reason it's being done is to promote homosexuality because they can't reproduce that kind of a behavior. They have to recruit. And what better place to recruit than within a grade school where you can tell a kid that it's okay for somebody to sodomize, for one man to sodomize another, Fred. And that's exactly what they're trying to do in this country. And Steve Gunderson is guilty of helping promote that kind of a lifestyle. And the only thing that saved Steve Gunderson was he was in the right party at the right time.
Well, now, what do you think the local school district is inclined to go along with this, or are there a bunch of liberals running that too?
Fred, what do you think about that school district?
You know, you will find they're supportive to a certain extent. You got 1 or 2 good people there in the school district, and the rest of them are very liberal.
Okay, yeah, very liberal. Well, you're so true there, Fred. And the reason is because it's not the elective process for the school board in this area. It's not by districts. What it is, it's by who's got the most money and who can run an expensive campaign and win out there. So if you got $10,000, Fred, and you want to be on the school board, you can pretty much buy a seat.
Well,
but there is a light at the end of the tunnel, Fred. After all these years of darkness and people like Lee Hansen getting close to 100,000, way over 100,000 when you count his benefits, you got principals pushing 90,000 plus benefits. That's ridiculous, Fred. And some of these schools got 3 or 4 principals.
What about the teachers' union? I mean, are they a real problem too, do you think?
Well, the teachers' unions control the school board and the superintendent. That's my personal opinion, and someone's going to have to prove otherwise to me, but these teacher unions have bought and control school boards all over the state. Now, one way of busting that up in the Eau Claire area is going to a 5-5-1 type situation like the city council did, Fred. But you don't need 11 members on the school board. You need about 7 or 9. So you can go to a 3-3-1 or a 4-4-1 where you have 4 candidates elected from districts, forum at large, and then an at-large school
The
president.
best thing, I think, would be to elect the people from districts. That would be
Yeah.
the most just.
But you know, if you go with that proposition, Fred, then the socialists and the other people out there that push the 551 in the city, they'll naturally jump on board of a 331 or a 441. How could they resist it, Fred? It's exactly what they did to our city. So
Yeah,
if it's good for the goose, Fred, it's good for the gander.
Unfortunately, that occurred because of some of the leadership of in the city council, and the paper, of course, picked on that council.
Yeah.
Everything that they did was a little bit wrong or a little bit questionable.
It was another example of how the Leader Telegram
yeah.
helped slant things away from support
Right.
for the present council that was on there. Not this present council, but the council at the time, that they seemed to kind of put a little, what they call a little spin on it there, Fred. Those spin doctors down at the Leader Telegram.
What about Plombon? You think they're trying to put some spin on that story to save him?
Well, unfortunately, you have very few people in Madison that are elected down there, Democrat or Republican, that have any guts or nerve. You haven't seen, has Rob Krybeck stood up, Fred, and demanded that he resign or say that he's going to introduce a bill? Has Dave Prosser stood up and said, I'm going to introduce we're going to ask for the first day of session, we're going to vote to see whether Plombon should be not seated.
I believe that
As
they have
Moen does,
already
Fred.
counted noses, and they probably have found out
Fred,
that they don't have the
Sometimes
votes.
you got to do the right thing, whether you have the votes or not. The right thing for them to do down there is ask them to step down as legislators. Do they want to have respect from the people of Wisconsin, or do they want to have disdain and
Well, couldn't his
distrust?
constituents recall him?
Yeah, but
Sure.
that'll be January of '96 is the earliest they can do that. By then, and
They couldn't do it next year.
between now,
95.
no, he takes office January 3rd of '95, so they would have to wait one full calendar year, so it would be January 3rd of '96 before they could start the recall process. Then there would have to be an election. By that time, you're almost getting into the next race. So by the Republican leadership remaining silent in the assembly down there and not rattling their saber and demanding a resignation now, they are conveniently pushing this off till the next election. You have to also remember that the Republicans went through some grueling races in the state of Wisconsin, Fred, and they don't have the funds right now to run another special election. It would cost as much as $50,000 to try and put Laufenberg in there run Laufenberg a third time, because the Democrats wouldn't just sit back and not run a candidate. They would find a good candidate to run too. So the recall thing will probably fizzle, like most of them have, and it's sad to say, but by the time it gets off the ground, it'll be almost election time again. Because it would be '95.
You don't think the Eau Claire paper will call for his resignation?
Yeah, they already have
Oh, they did.
in an editorial. So is the Chippewa Herald. So I guess also is either a Milwaukee or one of the Milwaukee or Madison papers has.
Milwaukee Sentinel.
Milwaukee Sentinel's called for his resignation. So it's just now a matter of the Assembly pulling up their bootstraps and deciding if they're going to have if this new Republican leadership in the Assembly is going to show that they're going to be leaders, or they're going to be wimps, Fred. They're going to do something for the good of the people or not. It's going to come down to that. And if they can't lead, they need to step out of the way and put Democrats back in the leadership role and let them sit back and cry and act like the minority.
Well, has Dave Zine said anything about this? Has he asked for the resignation of Plombon?
I don't know, Fred. Have you heard anything from Dave?
No, I haven't.
I guess he said he would take over some of Plombon's duties as far as office hours. He's going to have some extra office hours in the 68th district to cover for Plombon, because it's been close to a month now Plombon hasn't been dealing with his constituents, and people have day-to-day problems, and that's where they're not being represented right now. Dave's over there trying to straighten out his personal life in a treatment center in Marshfield, which is finally he's doing the right thing and getting on the right track, but it's going to take years of recovery. Fred,
Don't you think Plombon would have to resign if all the local legislators got together, Zine and Krybeck and Moan, and
I don't think you'll find they'll all get together because I wouldn't expect Senator Moan to do so.
Let me tell you why. This is going to be I'm going to be very frank, Fred. This is one of the few times that I'll be frank.
Oh,
I know.
Well, I thought you were Chuck.
I know, but right now I'm going to be frank. The problem is you've got alcoholics down there in Madison that are state legislators. You got people involved in pornography. You got people that are being blackmailed. And that's why you're probably not going to see nothing done with Plumbaum, because when the mud starts flying, it'll fly thick and heavy, and a lot of people will get hurt, and a lot of careers could be damaged. Plus, you got closeted homosexuals down there that don't want to be revealed. So if this starts, that's what they're afraid of. The leadership down there is afraid that the mud's going to start flying, and a lot of things are going to be revealed. You got state senators that are drunk on the floor down there. I've personally talked to state senators that have smelled alcohol on the breath of other state senators right during session. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. So if you get into this thing, it's going to get nasty and bloody. And that's what they're trying to avoid. And so now we go back to being Chuck.
You're talking about this too. I have empathy for Plumbaum. And the reason I have that is he doesn't have his family, a wife behind him. There's a divorce there, or he doesn't have that support that he needs. And I've seen where people, and I went to Al-Anon for 9.5 years, where people went to 10 years, 10 times to treatment, 15 times, 17 times, and the last time took. And that took years before they were able to beat it.
I know what you mean, Fred. Well, caller, we've got to move on, so thanks a lot. We appreciate your call, and continue to watch the show, and we appreciate it very much, Fred. Of course, Fred, we've got our own staff right here that does our typing for us. You know, we try to keep up on the latest news coming in. I think we've had a call waiting on line 2 for quite a while, and we are taking calls at 839-5067, isn't it, Fred?
I guess so.
All right, okay, quiet there. Quiet on the set. I think Roy has a term paper due or something there. He doesn't know that the semester is already over. Okay, go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
Hello. Yeah, I've been on for a little while.
Yeah, well, sorry we kept you waiting there, but this other caller has
no problem.
very interesting question.
I tell you, you either make me mad as hell or you're gung-ho right on. But there's never a dull moment.
I know, that's the way we try
I enjoy your program. I got 2 comments, actually, and I got a question for you in between. My first comment is to the Leader Telegram. That article, or that series of articles you were mentioning that ran a whole week, I believe, on homosexual life. I've had a little journalism training, 2 years in high school, 2 years in university, and we learned the basics of the tricks of the trade. There's no way in the world that qualified as front page news. It didn't even qualify for Section A, let alone above the fold page 1. That was not news. It could have passed maybe as a feature for the curiosity seekers, but that was not news.
You don't even see that in the New York Times or
Oh, of course not. They're a newspaper.
or the St. Paul papers, or, you know, because it's ridiculous. They're trying to push something that close to, if you're lucky, 2%. Is even involved.
Well, they can push all they want, but I don't bend that far, and I don't believe most people do.
Yeah.
Anyway, I did write a letter to the Voice of the People, which somehow they must have lost it on the way to their printing room because it never appeared in print.
Well, that happens quite a bit.
Yeah, I've noticed that. Anyway, okay, well, so much for, that's about all that subject's worth anyway. My question to you, and then I'd like to follow your answer with a comment, and then I'll get off and let somebody else on.
All right.
Do you believe that Jeffrey Dahmer was insane? There's been a lot of talk in the print media about that lately. Do you believe Dahmer was insane?
Well, Fred has been in psychodramas and psychotherapy for many, many years, Fred. What's your opinion?
I don't really know, but when you think of what he did, he wasn't sane, that's for sure, because no sane person would do those things.
Well, I'll tell you, in most of the cases, he admits that he would go out and get drunk. But
Well, I can get drunk too, but about the worst I might do is say something out of line to somebody else's wife, and then I feel bad about it for days afterwards. But when it comes to that, drunk is no excuse for that kind of behavior.
well, humanity can sink to the lowest gutter you can find, and that's,
Depravity.
once again, it's been proven that apart from God, a person will do anything. I mean anything. There's nothing new under the sun. This isn't the first time.
Right. Well, that was my comment. I'm not theologian enough to prove or disprove that there is a devil or a Satan, but I do believe there are forces of evil at large.
I mean, we had
And we can't forgive the forces of evil every time with, well, he was insane or he was drunk. I believe there is true evil, and Jeffrey Dahmer was the epitome of it.
You know, we had, just up to a few years ago, we had cannibals and headhunters in New Guinea. I mean, they would raid other villages and find, they'd carry a few people back and cook them up and eat them. That was just
Well, that was more or less part of a accepted lifestyle, religiously and also for survival.
Yeah.
Dahmer was doing it for sexual gratification. Now, there's a difference.
Well, it's kind of like, what's his name said there, what's the guy down there in Florida that was fried, Fred, that Dobson.
Oh, Dr. Dobson.
A lot of these guys, without exception, are involved in pornography, and they have to keep getting a bigger kick and a bigger kick, and
I've read
more
that.
perverse and more perverted. I mean, no longer will what's on the screen. It doesn't matter if they're watching a snuff film where there's somebody actually being cut to pieces in front of a camera, and that happens.
Now, do you blame that on the pornography or on the person that's that malleable in the mind?
Well, a lot of things are learned behavior.
I've seen dirty books. I've read dirty books and seen pictures without doing anything.
I'll tell you, a lot of stuff is learned behavior. Right now there's a movie out called Natural Born Killers, and it's where it talks about serial killers and people going on crime waves. Well, some kid watched that several times, and then he went out and killed about 5 people in a family here. They're on trial now for their lives out in Arizona or somewhere for doing it. Just reading about it last night.
Well, don't you think maybe those kind of people have it in them to start with, and
yeah, but
maybe
something like
maybe
that,
that movie is just a key that unlocks the.
something like that pushes them over the edge. Now
Right.
there's a rap song out by Snoop Doggy Dogg called "Murder Was a Case" or something like that, and there's a few cases that have popped up around the country now where kids have listened to that over and over again and then killed members of their own family or killed other people with that still ringing in their ears. And I'll tell you, it's very potent when you mix drugs and music like that together and you leave your mind open to that stuff and you listen to a song like that 20, 30 times. And if you're doped up enough, I'm telling you, this stuff will cause you to do things.
Well, it's, you know, something too there. It's just like you take one drink, you're not drunk. You take 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you're not drunk. But the next one may be the one that gets you drunk, and it's reading the pornography. If you read enough of it, you're going to act it out.
There are some drugs out there that will take you out of reality and put you in a dream world. There's a drug called ecstasy
I've heard of
that they're using in dance clubs and rave clubs, and people will stay up on that stuff for as much as 36 hours and dance. I mean dance fast for 36 hours before they collapse, with no sleep, no food or anything. And just be in, why they call it ecstasy, be in a state of ecstasy. And then you talk to them, interview them, and they don't remember big hunks of that time. So there is such a thing as blackouts. Dahmer could have went into some blackouts. Alcoholics, serious alcoholics go into blackouts. They can black out in New York City and wake up in Chicago, laying in a subway and not even know how they got there. And it's real.
Ted
that.
Bundy
Now,
was the
I
one
have
you
done
quoted
that in the
before.
past, but I usually just wake up in bed. When I get to that state, I go home and go to bed.
And that's one of the first signs that you're having a problem with alcohol is when you start having blackouts. And Dahmer was having blackouts. And he was a problem when he was in the military. He was an alcoholic over in Germany, and they're still trying to see if there's any bodies buried over there. So this wasn't something that just happened with Dahmer overnight. It was a constant, he was a very heavy alcoholic, drank quite a bit.
But I still do believe in forces of evil, though.
Oh, yeah.
And
Well,
regardless of what it took to turn those forces loose in that particular man, in his particular mind and body, it was forces of evil.
well, those forces are a lot easier to come in and take over when you've let
Yeah,
your,
you open yourself up to it.
right, you let your resistance down,
Right.
and you're it's almost like hypnosis. Have you ever seen a good professional hypnosis? He can take 9 out of 10 people and make them do things that they never thought they'd ever do in their life.
I've been hypnotized. I paid $95 for a 50-minute session with, well, I won't mention the name. It's a psychologist here in town. It was to make me quit smoking.
Yeah.
It lasted 3 days.
I was going to say, how many packs are you up to
Now,
now?
I can't afford $35 a day to quit smoking.
Yeah.
If I could, I'd go every 3 days and get hypnotized. I could kick the habit for good, but it's a little too steep.
Yeah, but there is I'll tell you, when you're taking massive amounts of drugs and alcohol, and you're watching snuff films, and you're watching homosexual pornography, and you're hanging around the gay bars and stuff, and you're on the prowl like that, you end up with people like Dahmer, and you end up with people like Ted Bundy's, and you end up with people like what's his name in Chicago there that killed
Gacy.
killed 26 boys. You know, he'd cruise around and find them and offer them.
They offer him a job or something, didn't he?
And then he'd strangle them or whatever he did to them. But I'm telling you, it's gruesome out there. And at any given time, there's over 100 serial killers traveling the United States, killing people. And you can watch any show on missing persons, and you'll see the beautiful young girls, 15, 16, 17, missing all over this country. Thousands of them.
You know, I think the Eau Claire police are feeling left out a little bit with some of these big city stuff. It turns out if you're in a Leader Telegram, just about any time anybody does anything, they're investigating whether it was gang related. I think they just wish. We don't have gangs in Eau Claire. Eau Claire is the most peaceful place I've ever lived, and I've been all over.
Well, they do have the rumblings of gangs. A lot of it's associated with La Crosse, Wausau, and the Minneapolis and Milwaukee and St. Paul, but it is starting to creep in here now, and what you're going to see happen, and you're already seeing the iceberg of it, tip of it. Is,
don't you think a lot of it's just style? It's stylish to dress like gangs
but
now.
that will
Like
wear,
when I was a kid, it was stylish to dress like the Beatles. I wasn't a Beatle, but I dressed like one.
well, it'll wear thin though, because nowadays, I mean, you don't have a comb and you're sitting on a street corner combing your hair. You got a gun in your pocket, and you got your colors, and you got another gang that might drive by and yell some obscenities at you, and before you know it, you got gang warfare going on, and it's no longer fists.
But not in Eau Claire.
Kids don't settle things with fists anymore. They settle them with knives and guns.
And
And
bats.
And that's starting to spill into Eau Claire. And what you're going to see is you're going to see it organized. You're going to see it organized into drug trafficking, and they're going to be killing, maiming, and fighting over drug turf right here in Eau Claire. And a lot of it's going to have to do with opium, heroin, crack cocaine, things of that nature.
Well, I hope not.
Some of the same things that our state representative, in the case of the cocaine, got involved in. And you're going to see that continue to happen unless there's a way of diffusing it now while it's small. There's less than 100 gang members in Eau Claire now, but the police and the social workers have been behind this thing. They need to get out in front of it and get some curfews instituted in Eau Claire. They need to start working with the youth, having some kind of youth centers or something for it, but they've got to get in front of this thing. They're behind it, and they're chasing it, and it's going to get out of control.
I still think they're blowing it all out of proportion.
Yeah.
I hope they are anyway. That's all we can do is hope that they are.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks a lot, caller. We've got another call waiting. We
Thank
appreciate
you.
your calls and continue to watch. All right. Okay, Fred. You know, we got another caller waiting there, Fred, but I wanted to read something here. It's kind of in that line,
Yeah.
Fred, what he was just talking about. 2 men, this is in Providence, Rhode Island. 2 men were ordered held without bail, accused of sexually assaulting a woman, beating her on the head with a rock, urinating on her, and tossing her into a river. The woman played dead, then swam to shore in near freezing weather and walked a mile to get help. Kevin Brown, 23, and John Pelland, 25, both of Pawtucket, were charged with attempted murder and sexual assault of a 35-year-old woman. Both were arrested within 12 hours of the attack December 7th. Isn't that cruel, Fred, what they did
Yes.
here? She had the fortitude and the will to live, and now both them guys are going to fry. They thought
Well,
they'd got rid of the evidence.
yeah.
That's the trouble with our society, Fred. It's a throwaway society. We throw away our babies, we throw away our children, and now we got people actually killing other people for
Right.
sexual perversion and then throwing them away.
Yes.
So we're going to take a call here, Fred, and then we're going to let you read an article. And I hope it's short. Go ahead, caller.
Yes, I have a few short questions for each of you. Fred,
Yes.
how is it capable on your part, and it's not a matter of my defending or not defending President Clinton, but out of respect for the President of the United States, how is it possible that you know what type of language President Clinton uses?
I've read in a book some of his comments to
Can it be
a woman.
substantiated, Fred?
Well,
Yeah,
the
I
book
can-
was published.
I can give you a source. Don McIlvaney, who writes the McIlvaney Intelligence Report, personally knows the Secret Service agents and FBI agents. He's involved in the intelligence.
If you were to go back to any of the
Just
presidents,
wait a minute now. He's involved in the intelligence community, and he says they both swear like a couple sailors at each other in there, and several of the Secret Service have asked for reassignment,
all right.
according to Don McIlvaney.
All right, let's say that you went back farther.
Got another
Yeah.
call.
Let's say that you went back farther and you were to take Eisenhower or go all the way through to Kennedy or Nixon or any of the other presidents. Don't you think that possibly that they at times swore also?
Oh yeah, Truman was a tough old bird.
Okay, well, let me just go another question. You pointed out without any type of substantiation, and I mean I'm not again or for the man, but I'm questioning that you two people are, whatever your position is close to a journalist on that you need to be able to substantiate what you're saying. You're saying is that this man, when he should have been at particularly Plumbaum, should have been at a place, was at a party, homosexual party. How did you know that?
Oh, yeah.
Well, thanks a
that was
lot,
not-
caller. We really appreciate your call, but I don't think anybody up here said anything about Plumbaum being at a
No,
homosexual
it was
party.
Gunderson. Gunderson is one that you
Oh
talked
yeah,
about.
but Dave Plumbaum, he
Yeah.
could. I've heard some other rumors about Plumbaum's extracurricular activities in the area of sexual dalliances, especially up in the Stanley area. Fred, I've heard stories about in the kitchen of restaurants and things of that nature, but I've never heard about him being involved in any homosexual movement. But the bigger question is, Fred, is I understand that there's a quiet investigation going on as to where Plumbaum got his cocaine and his marijuana, and I guess they're looking at in the area of the Chippewa Valley Technical College that it could possibly be one of his suppliers who was out there either as a student or a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you got there, the short and sweet, Fred, because we still got to get down to on this date in history.
This,
And we're running out of time.
This comes from the Wanderer of St. Paul, and it's the December 16th
Yeah.
issue.
What do you got there?
And it's what was left out of the contract with America.
Good.
And the contract says nothing about abortion or school prayer, the staple issues of the religious right that contributed significantly to the Republican victory. It says nothing about reversing judicial activism or its anti-constitutionalist roots that brought us these issues. It says nothing about homosexuals in the military or the matter of homosexual rights in general. And I think that's the foundation to build the Republican Party upon. And if you don't have a foundation and you build a house, you know what is liable to happen, is liable to fall down. And this is what they need, is the foundation.
Fred, for 2 years I've been saying a house divided against itself cannot stand. Abraham Lincoln said it before me, and Abraham Lincoln stole it out of the Bible as words of Jesus. And a house divided against itself, in the case of the Republican Party, cannot stand. They're trying to push the party to the left. They don't want to talk about those issues because they consider them divisive, but they're going to have to deal with them in '96 any way they look at it. They're not going to be able to dance around them.
I agree with you.
Okay, I think we had a call waiting here. Well, Okay, we got a couple of open lines there. I heard Roy, I think Roy got mad at somebody and ran him off the air there, Fred. So what we're going to do here, Fred, is we're going to ask you a question. And this is going to be a tough one, and we're going to see if you can handle it, Fred.
Mm-hmm.
This was 1950. This man went on to be President of the United States later on, Fred. But back in 1950, he was still a general. He was appointed Commander-in-Chief of the North
And that was,
Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO.
That was General Eisenhower.
Dwight D. Eisenhower. Yep, Fred. Between him and Patton, they won the war for us. And MacArthur out there in the Philippines. Those three generals were the blood and guts of the American troops.
Well, I think there's another few generals that
LeMay?
did it, and
Was LeMay a general?
yes, Air Force.
All right.
Good man, too.
Patton was really a tough one. He died right there at the end of the war, didn't he?
That's right. You know, there were 3 attempts to take his life, and the third one succeeded. And it should never have succeeded because somebody fell down on a job or he took some chances that he shouldn't have taken.
Well, I'm sure they had German sappers out there trying to get him all through the war.
No, this was in the American Army that these attempts were made.
His own men tried to kill him?
Some of his own, and
Wasn't he
it
blown
may
up
be-
in a Jeep or something?
well,
Went over a mine or something?
no, it wasn't that. It was a truck that did it,
Oh.
and that truck should not have been on that road.
Well, we
should
got
have been able to get through.
We got an open line, and we got about 4 minutes if anyone wants to call in. You know, Fred, there's a new man on the horizon here that could bring down the White House. His name is Webster Hubbell,
Yes.
and he could be the John Dean of the Clinton-Whitewater fiasco. As John Dean brought down President Nixon, Webb Hubbell could bring down President Clinton. Now, Webb's an older man. If they give him 20 years in prison, he's not going to like it. He's either going to decide that he's going to tell the truth, or he's going to not say a word, and he's going to go to prison for 20 years, and that's probably what they're going to give him. Now, Fisk was a front man for the Clintons.
Yeah, he was.
He subpoenaed a
he
bunch
was
of papers.
in the Whitewater. He was the attorney for the Whitewater
Development.
development.
What started the whole mess, he was the attorney for it. For his law firm represented the Whitewater development.
Now we got to make sure that the Republicans follow through on this.
Now, as I said many months ago, Fred, I said the Fisk is in. And that was before Starr was ever talked about. And finally they realized that Fisk was not independent. He was fronting for the Clintons, subpoenaing a bunch of papers and then burying them. No one knows if they'll ever get those papers now to see the light of day to find out exactly what happened.
Yes.
Well, Fred, I think we got another call here, so we'll see if it's still there. You're on the air, call.
Hi, my name is Bob, and I was wondering who you think is going to win the game tomorrow.
The Vikings and San Francisco, I assume.
Yeah.
Well, you know, the Vikes could pull an upset, but it's going to be tough. I mean, I'm looking at San Francisco to be in the not the Rose Bowl, but the
Super Bowl.
Super Bowl. And I would say, unfortunately, the Vikings are going to lose, but they're still in the playoffs.
Oh.
You know, I'm a Vikings fan, but that's going to be a tough one to win. San Francisco wants to start the playoffs with a victory, and Minnesota's been kind of up and down the last 5 games, so.
Okay. Thanks. Bye.
All right, it's going to be rough. You know, Fred, Roy's still working on his term paper back there, and we're almost out of time, Fred, so we're going to find out when your next show is, Fred.
On Thursday night at 7 o'clock,
Who's going to be your guest?
Wayne Laufenberg.
And what's he going to talk about?
Well, tune in and find out.
Okay, that's Thursday of this week,
Yes,
and it's your last program of the year. What time?
yes, 7 o'clock.
Okay, well, we got to hop on that fire engine, Fred. We got a big fire down there. Of course, we're downtown, so we want to stay. We'll see you next year, 1995, right here on the Cow Report. I've been your host, Chuck Lee, and with me, as usual, has been Fred the True Stafford, and we want to wish you a Happy New Year We'll see you in 1995. Adios, amigos.
Au revoir.